I feel like I understand Baxter Ward a bit better now. Your words lifted his usual resting smile. I'm glad my rambling has been enlightening. I hope the subject has been to your taste. He shot you a playful wink and chuckled to himself. As the day went on, in the idle pauses and quiet minutes after this conversation, you'd catch yourself pondering the strange man you were coming to know. More and more, you felt as though Sunset Bird formed a vital part of your emotional core. Happiness to you was the sound of waves on the shore, the feeling of warm sand between your toes. There was something too sentimental about the bright summer days that seemed to stretch on to eternity, only to draw to a close in hand. Maybe you'd forever be seeing the world through sea glass, but Baxter was another person entirely. For him, perhaps the world was monochrome, or maybe it was golden, but with the color of leaves instead of sand. Talking with him made it impossible to ignore just how different your lives had been up until now, how separate your worlds were, all up until that moment when he showed up on your street. Now your lives were intertwined. However, briefly the forest and the sea foam commingling. Though you knew his love was in the trees and the fall air, you couldn't help but feel happy that he'd wandered his way down to the shore, to you. From there, you and Baxter continued poking around until he browsed every shop on the path. He even doubled back around, leading you all the way across again for a second glance. Despite the short length, it was easy to miss something even after a dozen passes through because the area was so packed. But Baxter was satisfied with going through twice. He came to a halt at the end of the path, his attention leaving the shops and landing on you. Thank you for showing me this place.
Bravo.
This truly has been a fantastic stop on my California sightseeing extravaganza. He inclined his head gracefully, and the shopping street was officially a hit. Glad you gave him a thumbs up. Now I suppose I need to hold up my side of the bargain. I said I'd show you somewhere new, didn't I? Are you still interested in joining me in checking off an outing on my own goal list? Yeah, I'm not ditching you now. Fantastic. In that case, we'll need to return to the neighborhood. He sauntered off in the correct direction before clarifying what his plan was, leaving you to trail behind him. With your brain abuzz over all the places he could possibly be taking you, you mentally said goodbye to your old friend, the shopping street. You made it back to Baxter's rented condo and climbed into his also rented car. He brought up directions on his phone, though was careful not to let you catch the glimpse of the destination. He didn't even give you a hint. Then Baxter slipped his phone into the car handle slot for further reference and began to drive. You relaxed in Baxter's passenger seat, attempting to puzzle out where he was actually taking you. He was in a good mood, but any attempt at asking about the plan resulted in increasingly coy answers. After how many questions of yours he'd been answering, it was funny to have him suddenly act as if he'd never heard of the concept of sharing information with another person. You didn't push it, even. Inevitably, the veil of secrets would be removed. You only had to be patient. However, when you finally turned into a parking lot, you admitted it was not what you had been expecting, even if you didn't know what to expect. It was still something you would not have guessed in a million years. On the top of the spacious building was a human-sized white pin. The place he'd wanted to sightsee at was a bowling alley. Baxter led you to the entryway on air-light feet. Even from there, you could hear the clattering of normal-sized pins getting knocked down, cutting into the disco tunes playing into the background. The front desk advertised rates for playing per game versus per hour. Also, the wall, a tower of shelves, had held dozens of shoes in all sorts of sizes. And past there that were the shining alleys.
All right.
Here we are. He was content, as if bowling was all his soul needed to find peace. A bowling alley isn't what most people think of as sightseeing. This is normal Monday night stuff.
Oh?
Sightseeing is all about the sights you want to see. You glanced at sparkling floors, walls, balls, and even couches. It was certainly a sight. Personally, I've never been bowling in my life. I wanted to try it for longer than I can remember, and well, what better opportunity than when I'm on vacation? Wouldn't it be so much stranger to wish I'd try it while I live my regular life? The life that I must remind you never had been bowling in it before, it would be entirely unexplainable. Here, I'm a tourist. Doing new things is part of my job description. Maybe I should pretend to be a tourist too. If they can do whatever they want. Baxter chuckled your joke, striking his funny bone. Maybe you should. It's rather thrilling. You snickered too, picturing yourself as the most over-the-top tourist to ever tourist. You'd never be able to show your face in Sunset Bird after the summer was over. Hanging out with Baxter, seeing firsthand how he was living, you were compelled to ask yourself, had you really done everything you wanted to do? You are reminded of the fact that your time in Sunset Bird has its own limits, and you could very well be reaching the end of the line soon. This would be the last summer you had before becoming an adult, before taking your first step into everything that lay beyond. Sometimes lying awake in bed at night, you would feel the tension like a bubble in your chest, the worry, the excitement, the anticipation of what the future might hold. Before that, How could you make the most of what remained? You weren't sure how to answer those questions, but in the current occasion, at least, you didn't have the chance to ponder them further. Baxter chimed in again. You train your thought. Your train of thought evaporated.
So,
Since we're on the subject, Stella, have you ever done this before? Bowling, I mean. I guess I've done it once or twice. I see, but have you been to this particular bowling alley? I know it's quite new. What? You glanced at the sparkling floors, walls, balls, and even couches. It certainly was recently made. Not a thing had any sign of wear and tear, and none of it was familiar. No, I haven't been. Baxter smirked. Victorious.
see?
So I did bring you somewhere you'd never seen before. Alright, you tried. I'll give you this one. Thank you. I'll take what I can get. Now, then, should we get in line? They seem to be popular today, or perhaps this is considered a slow day. I have no basis of comparison. But we might be waiting for Elaine. It's alright. The two of you joined the queue at the counter. Though the bowling alleys were indeed full, you got your booking in and were handed rental shoes for what an opening came. You laced up your shoes for a sec, and then that was in terms of finishing preparation. There was time aplenty to kill before your round would begin. Well, since you were here, I was wondering, what's your family like? Baxter straightened it up properly. He'd guessed you would ask about this sooner or later.
Honestly.
It's not the most exciting story. All told, my immediate family consists of my mother and father and myself. For better or worse, I am an only child. That tends not to surprise people. His voice took on a slight lilting quality, as if he was reciting something he'd practiced many times over. In many ways, my parents are the prototypical example of success. They're affluent, sophisticated, and have a wide-reaching and influential social circle. As families go, I suppose I'd have to say what we are a happy set. As sometimes happened with Baxter, you weren't convinced he was giving you the whole picture. You couldn't help but give him a curious look. What about not in general? His eyes narrowed knowingly, and his mouth pressed into a thin smirk. I can see you're not content. I love my parents, but that's not to say that there aren't complaints to be had. It's a mutual feeling. They understand care through the lens of control and protection. That's been their way ever since I was young. In that sense, they treat me no different from a child. But of course, they are quiet, educated, esteemed, and a tad old, as if their companies most days. That's not the environment to act as a kid. That meant I've always been expected to behave with the maturity of someone their own age, or perhaps even older somehow. A bit of a paradox, isn't it? Do everything as an adult would while getting their respect an infant does? As for me, I think of myself as much more of a free spirit at heart. I'm my own person and I like to enjoy life in whatever way I see fit.
Well,
You could say I'm a bit of a rebel. He said it almost furtively, like he divulged some important personal secret. You're the politest rebel I've ever met. He shrugged in a pleased sort of manner, accepting your quip without complaint. Speaking of your parents, where are they now? You didn't mention them visiting Sunset Bird. They're at home, most likely. I don't know for sure. Huh, that was odd to you. Why did Baxter come to here during his semester off instead of going back to his family home? I didn't want to stay with them or go back home to Oregon at all, in fact. More rebellious behavior on my part, you see. His tone was a strange mixture of proud and indifferent. Diffident, like he knew how frivolous it sounded, but had decided to own it anyway.
now.
Mother and father agreed to me vacationing on my own, but under the condition that they would have the choice of where I stayed. California being fairly close by, and Sunset Bird being so quaint, not to mention our prior excursions to the area, they concluded that this was the easiest way to keep me out of trouble. They had it all planned out, a safe summer holiday for their only child. You couldn't help but be surprised at that. He'd said a similar thing when you two first met, actually, that his parents had sent him here to keep it from being exciting. Sure, Sunset Bird was small and sleepy for the most part, but it was still the California coast, and Prison Vista City was right there. What part of that was unexciting, especially since he had his own rental car? What do you normally do if a summer in SoCal is unexciting? As you posed this question to him, Baxter's casual demeanor underwent a change. His customary relaxed smile took on a wickedly sharp edge, and his eyes flashed with a devilish mischief. The change was so surprising that you couldn't help but imagine what his prim and proper parents would think if they were here to see it. He shifted closer, conspiratorially, and spoke in a hushed voice.
So,
Do you know what the legal age requirement is for renting a car in the state of California? 18? It's 21. He said it totally casually, almost without inflection. I, however, am 19. It took a moment for his words to register. Wait, Baxter was 19, and the legal age for renting a car was... Oh, You were rendered momentarily speechless all this time, and you had no idea. Baxter carried on speaking, not noticing or politely ignoring the implosion your thought process was undergoing. The truth of the matter is that my parents, being uncreative people, had full confidence that I wouldn't be able to rent a car. That's why Sunset Bird was chosen as my destination.
It's doable.
But I don't have the same issue. There are ways around the age limitation, as you might have gathered. Since I'm over 18 and had control over my own bank accounts, I honestly don't know why they bothered trying at this point. The whole situation tickled you a little. It had to be extra work to get hold of the car, and all Baxter did with it was sightseeing. Even when law breaking, there was something so proper about him. So, how did you manage it? It wasn't all that difficult, honestly. I didn't have to do anything awful. Don't worry. I have a large number of social connections myself. Members of the dance circuit, acquaintances from the country club, fellow students from college, miscellaneous family friends. The list goes on. The point is, I'm fortunate enough to have a connection in the area who had an extra car, which was mine to use provided I would cover the costs, plus a little extra, of course. The throwaway nature of the last part gave you pause. Baxter's idea of a little would probably put Cliff Holden's $20 to shame. Okay, that's good to know. I see. Splendid. Glad that's squared away. He gave you a saccharine smile, all honey, and that, for now, was that. The conversation successfully filled the waiting period, and an attendant suddenly called you over. Elaine was free. Excellent, thank you. Together you headed over to the rack of house balls where Baxter began to size them up. So, they come in different weights. Interesting. He touched a forefinger to his chin, pondering to the choice carefully. You picked a medium ball. Moderation was the key. Not too heavy, not too light. You picked up one
Very well.
of the mid-weight balls that was just right. It was a dark ebony black. Seeing your choice, Baxter nodded approvingly.
Very well.
This is a solid option. The best of both worlds, right? Easy to hold, yet with sufficient weight to give it some momentum. I think I will follow your lead. Baxter picked out an identical ball, flashing you a wry smile. It's even the right color. Now, care to take the first shot? You gave a nod. Marvelous. I'm looking forward to this. Best of luck, Stella. Mr. Monochrome took a seat into the striking red couch to watch. Him and that couch together almost looked like some kind of modern art display. But you weren't at a gallery, you were at a bowling alley, and he was waiting for you. You eyed the pins at the far end of the lane, gauging the distance. A breath in, a breath out. You raised the ball behind you, took a few steps forward, and swung. Nice. You knocked a fair number of pins down. This game wasn't so hard for you, and past experience definitely helped. Baxter gave a round of applause.
Exciting.
An excellent way to begin. Since it wasn't a strike, you had one more attempt this frame. You waited for your ball to be returned, then lined up another shot. This time the ball zipped down the lane and tipped over some more of the pins, but not quite enough to get the spare. That was too bad. The triangular arrangement was reset, and the scoreboard flashed up with Baxter's name. You took a seat on the box leather just as Baxter limbered up for his first shot of the game. Alright then, let's see how this goes, shall we? He turned the ball over in his hands a few times, as though it were an alien object. He eventually figured out he was searching for the holes to put his fingers through. It was more than obvious that he'd never so much as touched a bowling ball before. After more fumbling, he managed to work out the grip. Wish me luck. Not one for hesitation. Baxter took a couple large strides and sent the ball rolling. It hurtled down the lane straight on at first. Oh dear. He watched as the ball curved massively to one side. It reached the end of the line, barely. It clipped the very back corner pin, which fell out right as the ball dropped into the gutter. 1 point for Baxter. He turned to you and grimaced playfully. Can you tell this is new to me? It's okay. Thank you. Well, here's hoping I can do touch better than that. Baxter retrieved his ball and rolled his shoulders, taking form in front of the lane. His brow was furrowed in concentration. He wasn't as hasty as before. He took his time to line up the next shot. 1 step, 2 step, a third step, and released. It shot up like a cannonball, barreling ahead. It still curved slightly at the last moment to knock one of the center right pins head on. 5 more points. Baxter nodded to himself, satisfied at the improvement.
Not bad.
60% success is plenty for a first attempt. It's all part of the learning process. I must say, I'm enjoying myself so far. Your turn, Stella. As the game proceeded, you and Baxter settled into a rhythm. You exchanged friendly chatter between frames, with the odd quip or moment of celebration thrown in. It was a comfortable way to pass the afternoon. In an idle moment, you found yourself wondering more about Baxter again. The two of you would be there for a while yet, and if you felt inclined, it wouldn't be too hard to strike up a more in-depth conversation. You chuckled to yourself at the convenient pun. So, what's up with the black and white thing? He looked down at his outfit and shrugged. I don't think of it as being much of a thing. Black and white happen to be my favorite colors. It's the only colors you ever wear. You even dyed your hair to match. That's more than a color simply being your favorite. Baxter quietly observed your words with a wry smile, clearly more amused than embarrassed. For all that, he just downplayed it. He totally owned this strange quirk of his character.
Alright.
Alright, I admit it. One could say I'm rather dedicated to the aesthetic as a whole. I came to it gradually, though I've had some level of affection for black and white ever since I was a small child. Anyone who knew me back then could have told you as much. I was very forthright and outspoken about my present preferences, as children can often do. But it wasn't until a few years ago that I made a conscious decision to align my fashion choices with that underlying attachment. It was around then that I came to understand how clothing could be an expression of your personality, a way of showing yourself to the world. I wanted to make a statement, you could say, so I started experimenting with more grayscale looks and began selectively tailoring my wardrobe around the limited palette. To start with, like most people, I had associated black and white with more formal taste and styles, tuxedos, dinner suits, tailcoats, and the like. But as I looked further beyond my own social group, I found a diverse range of alternative subcultures which drew upon the monochrome theme. There was a lot of appeal for me there as well. I ended up adapting many of them into my own personal sense of taste.
So,
The rest, as they say, is history. That actually made a lot of sense, now that it was all laid out in front of you. It was like that one small choice early on had snowballed, gathering momentum as time went on, and now it formed a core part of who he was. But if that were the case, the question remained. So, what made you like black and white in the first place? As a kid, I mean. Oh, that. He leaned in closer and playfully threaded his fingers together under his chin. Can you guess? What? It wasn't like him to beat about the bush. The fact that he was choosing to toy with you a little about this was not what you prepared for. Those are the standard formal colors. An admirable attempt. I did include that in my story, but that's not the reason I latched onto them originally.
see?
I'll try and make it easier for you. The crux of matter is this. Why do I, Baxter Ward, like the colors black and white so much? His voice took on a strange quality, placing a lot of emphasis on certain words. He was obviously trying to guide your thought process here, but you couldn't quite figure it out.
See?
Wait a minute. Black and white. Baxter Ward, black and white. No way. No way. It's because of your initials. He grinned from ear to ear. The punchline was finally revealed, a face of sheer delight. You got it. Brilliant, isn't it? And I have to give you credit. You managed to see the picture without every piece of the puzzle. The truth is, my full name is Baxter Alexander Ward. 3 out of 3. He rested his chin on his hands to beam at you. the very picture of smugness. You'd hardly seen him discontented in all the time you'd known him. That's such a perfect coincidence. Baxter just giggled boyishly at your response and swept his fingers idly through his bangs. I confess, as a child, I came to believe that black and white had to be a part of my identity as soon as I realized how well it coincided with my own name. It felt almost like magic in a way. Name carries power and importance. Kids love those kind of coincidences. It's part of the mystery of youth. Magic, huh? You were reminded of something that happened earlier. Is that why you reacted when I mentioned the amazing Alexander? Because it's your middle name?
You're good.
Oh, well spotted. That's correct again. You could say I wish to be an amazing Alexander in my own right. I've always been fond of my full name. Thank you for sharing it with me. You're very welcome. At any rate, I'm sure you can understand at least why I'm so attached to it and to my favorite colors. You certainly did. Who knew that such a simple question would lead to such a strange and unexpected answer? In the past few minutes, you ended up learning much more than you bargained for about a hidden deeps of Baxter Alexander Ward. In what felt like no time at all, you arrived at the final frame of the match. You glanced up at the scoreboard. The points had been neck to neck at all game, and even in that final moment, it could still go either way. You went first, and would end first, and looked into a spare on the last frame. Nice, you got an extra turn for that. With that, it was officially your final chance to take the lead. A strike here would put you out of Baxter's reach. You remained calm and shot your shot. The ball made smashing contact with the set. They toppled like dominoes being hit by a bat. A corner pin wobbled, holding out a total collapse, and ultimately it fell. You hit a strike. Your victory was all but secured. So the odds were against him. Baxter gave it his best attempt. He got his own bonus round that ended in yet another spare. He hummed in satisfaction, defeated but proud of his own performance. Then Baxter came over and offered you his hands to shake, the very model of sporting behavior. You took it. You took it. He fought hard until the end.
Thanks.
Baxter grasped your hand firmly, and then the two of you shook. He grinned.
Thanks.
Thank you for the game, Stella. I had a lot of fun. I tried my best, but you got the better of me in the end. Congratulations. You did great for your first try.
That's sweet.
You're too kind. It really seemed as though he was happy played to have played that well. Never mind that he didn't win. The joy of new experience was what mattered to Baxter in the end. The game reaching its conclusion, he wandered over to the main counter to return your rental shoes. Your sightseeing bowling adventure was finished. As you left the building, Baxter was quiet. He must have had something on his mind. He lifted his face to the twilight sky, then met your eyes. Well, we've had our fun, and the day is getting short on time. I suppose we could return to the neighborhood now. That was a question, not a statement. Baxter touched his chin in contemplation. He hadn't struck you as altogether thrilled by the idea, and coincidentally said that exact thing out loud.
To be honest,
To tell you the truth, I'd be disappointed to go home. Would it be asking too much for this to last a little while longer? I'm not sure about you, but after the thrill of our bowling match, I've become rather hungry. Could I treat you to dinner? Or at least we could attend a meal together. Now that Baxter had mentioned it, you realized your stomach was totally empty. You'd been out and about for hours. Sure, I could eat something. The prospect of having more opportunity to hang out lightened Baxter's already chipper mood. That's excellent. He furrowed his brow in thought, tapping a forefinger to his cheek. His attention drifted away from you as he cast his mind around for ideas. Something caught the fancy eventually. His eyes narrowed, and the corners of his mouth curled upwards.
perfect.
That could work. It's ideal, even. What is it? His gaze swept back to you, and he grinned wholeheartedly. So far today, we focused on location, which were new to one or both of us. That's all been good fun, but it may be nice to the end. It may be nice to end our little outing on a different note. Perhaps you see where I'm going with this. He tilted his head playfully, giving his smile even more of a bend. Baxter was nudging you in the right direction. For a meal, we could go somewhere that's familiar. I'm sure you could think of a suitable place. Somewhere you'd both been before. Oh, wait, of course. There was a perfect venue for an evening meal, one he and you were both well familiar with. You mean the Cypress? The country club where you first met all those years ago. It was exactly the kind of place Baxter would prefer. He beamed, relieved that you caught on.
Bravo.
Exactly. If that's agreeable with you as well, I can take us there right now. Yeah, I like that. Having settled on a place to eat, Baxter led you to his car with a spring in his step. The prospect of a jaunt to Cyprus obviously delighted him. You sped towards the general direction of Sunset Bird in the midst of its namesake period of day. The faint wisps of clouds overhead were painted a pale orange. When you pulled up to the country club, the sun was hanging behind the trees with lined the golf courses. You were led out to the recognizable dining area right away by the host, where a table for two was nestled in a quiet corner. He passed you menus and excused himself. A woman in a handsome waistcoat and jacket was beginning to light candles for the coming night. She paused that to attend the new guest. Good evening. I'll get you water immediately. Is there anything else I can bring? Good evening to you. One moment. Stella, I'm familiar with their offering. Would you like to order now? Yes, please. You'd mentally gone over what you wanted on the drive. Baxter smiled sweetly at the waitress, who readied a notepad to take your orders. It got sorted shortly, and she took her leave. After that, there was nothing to do but make yourselves comfortable. It felt nice to have some time to relax. You reclined in your chair, stretching out your leg, and idly peered around. You'd come at a good time. It was the middle of the week, and earlier in the evening than many people would go out for dinner. As it was, you had the entire place to yourselves. Baxter shifted into his seat, the, the wicker creakly, the wicker creaking quietly. He rested an arm casually over the back of it. A soft sigh broke the comfortable silence. It's a pity it's so quiet. I've have loved for there to be some music. He flashed you a lopsided grin. Or dancing, even. That's asking for too much, I know. However, when I visit the Cypress, either here or home, it's livelier than this. Such a shame, but I suppose they can't have a surreal every night. At least we were able to dance together last time, right? Baxter dipped his head in agreement, his brown eyes sparkling the color of amber in the sunset.
Understandable.
That's true. That's true. It was certainly a night to remember. I was beyond pleased to see such a good partner in the crowd, and then finding each other again after all this time. Well, it's nothing short of a miracle. He threaded his fingers through his hair and laughed softly, as if struck again by the absurdity of it all. It's times such as these where it feels as though you're close to something magical, wouldn't you say? The fingers of fate, reaching through time to touch the strings of our lives. It could have so easily never happened. That's what I found strange. A few choices made differently, and we might never have been even crossed paths at all. He shuddered dramatically, as if prospect chilled him despite the summer warmth.
Yes.
It doesn't bear thinking about. The serious note to his words was gone in an instant, replaced once more with his usual playful timbre. He struck a thoughtful profile, resting his chin in his hand, and then peeked at you slyly from the corner of his eyes.
You know.
You know, I first saw you standing there on the edge of the dance floor. It was captivating to see someone my age so put together. It can be easy for formal wear to fade into the background at those events. Everyone looks the same, but you are able to make the style something of your own. You were easily the best dressed partner going. I was delighted to take your attention as well, if only for one dance. You met Baxter's gaze, despite the flush in your cheeks. As always, Baxter was absolutely direct with his compliments, but it didn't throw you. Thanks. I'm glad you had a fun time. Baxter laughed at that, the sound ringing clear as a bell over the empty patio. The grass and the water and the sun's dying light caught them all. You'd missed this place. It had been too long since your last visit. Excuse me? Your train of thoughts was interrupted by the sound of the waitress arriving with your food. Two steaming plates were placed in front of you, and then you were alone again. Neither you nor Baxter wasted any time tucking in. The food was as good as you remembered, and by all accounts, Baxter was content with his choice too. But you didn't necessarily have to eat in perfect silence. You searched for a topic of conversation. You're single, right? His laid-back demeanor sharpened around the edges. His eyes were smiling at you. Even if his mouth wasn't, he enjoyed the implications of this question a great deal. If you were asking if he was single, it was probably because you cared about what the answer might be. His rich brown eyes found yours. I'm unattached. That shouldn't be news to you, though. That was true enough. Ever since his first introduction to Cove and you, when he arrived in Sunset Bird, Baxter had been open about the fact that he was absolutely extremely available.
So,
And how about you? Is there no special someone in your life at the moment? I'm single as well. Oh, I see. Sorry if it's embarrassing to talk about. Baxter gave you an amiable smile, completely unfazed. The idea that there might be anything embarrassing about the topic of romance only served to amuse them further.
of course.
No need to apologize. There's very little you could say that would fluster me. That's not me trying to brag, merely an observation. That squirreled that squared perfectly well with what you knew about him. It wasn't surprising that someone as outgoing and uninhibited as Baxter would be relatively difficult to knock off balance. It does you credit to be worried on my behalf. That wolfish expression made another appearance, but I'd say I'm enjoying myself. That was a relief to hear. You wouldn't have wanted to overstep. You felt confident now that nothing was off the board for the topic. If the look in his eyes was anything to go by, he would welcome it. Have you ever dated before? He answered you without missing a beat. I have. Nothing learned long term, you understand. I haven't suffered any tremendous heartache as of yet. Being single comes very naturally to me. And besides, I don't think I'm even old enough for anything to have truly qualified as long term. But
Well,
I've certainly had some experiences. Let's put it that way. He tittered innocently at his apparent double entendre. I'm glad love hasn't been too hard on you. Me too. Having said his piece, his expression dimmed, and his eyes wandered lazily away. And this is so like, who was your first crush? You knew that this question was coming out of the blue, but you were curious, and since you were on the topic of romance anyway, if not now, then when? And besides, Baxter had already reassured you that he wasn't going to be touchy about these kind of personal questions. He scratched his cheek thoughtfully, trying to recall a memory.
hmm.
A very interesting question. It can be hard to put an exact date and time to emotions. I'd say that I was a bit of a late bloomer. I didn't develop a soft spot for anyone until I was around 12. Some people I know had their first crush years before that. But but there was another kid who would attend the same dance hall that I did. Though we practiced totally different disciplines, I was naturally there for ballroom. They were a ballet dancer. But this something of a past. In truth, when it comes to attraction, I find discussion on flames that are still alight to be more worthwhile. And that was the end of his story, as spare as it was. Anyway, that's enough about me. Your turn, Stella.
What
I
do
know we
you think?
spoke about dating before, but who did you first feel a connection with? Was there anyone? It was someone from school. You wouldn't know who I mean. Or, wait. Okay. Truthfully, it was him. You were far too nervous to tell him that, though. The thought of telling him made your legs feel all wobbly. Who knew what he might think about it? No, it was much better to keep the fact to yourself for now. Baxter's expression remained inquisitive, clearly anticipating some form of response to his question. You'd have to disappoint him on this particular occasion. When you thought about it more specifically, it was at the summer soiree. You cast your mind back to the sight of Baxter in his gray suit. All that time ago, he'd been so unique, so polite, so charming. Many times since that day, you'd find yourself looking back and wishing you could have spent more time together. You'd resign yourself to the idea that he'd forever remain a memory. And then, just like that, he'd shown up out, out of the blue in Sunset Park. It was almost too incredible to think about. Yet there he was, right in front of you, like you'd been given a second chance. And now to be back in the same place you'd first met, the weight of all those coincidences hit you like a truck. Baxter coughed quietly, and you jolted back to yourself. Oops, you'd been getting pretty lost in your thoughts back there. You tried to look apologetic. Not to worry, you clearly had a lot of your. Not to worry, you clearly had a lot on your mind. Forget I asked. I won't press the issue further. Thank you for telling me. Don't
You're
mention it.
welcome.
You are most welcome, Stella. It was fulfilling discussion. All told, I feel like we know each other a lot better now, wouldn't you say? His eyes said more than his words did, and both were saying an awful lot. You met his gaze. You met his gaze steadily, in spite of the heat in your stomach. You passed the rest of the meal with idle chatter, exchanging anecdotes and silly stories. Everything was easier with some good food at hand. Eventually, dinner ended. The dishes was cleared. All the bills sent for. One of the things you discussed was who paid. You'd pay for yours, and he paid his. It was the fairest that way. Once the bill came and went, Baxter cleared his throat and made to stand. Shall we? You checked around for your belongings and nodded. Yeah, let's go home. Wonderful. You head through the club and out into the parking lot. Night was beginning to fall earnest. As you settled into the car, you found yourself gazing back at the cypress. In your hand, you thanked it for so many years of fine food and happy memories. It had been a good day, a lifetime of good days. And because of Baxter, it had offered you even more to be grateful for. That meeting was a gift to you from your old friend. The last of the daylight was long gone by the time you finally returned to your neighborhood. Baxter had gone more slowly than when you left, content to enjoy the drive, almost as if he was trying to delay the end of your sightseeing trip for a little while longer. You felt the same. It had been a special day. In many ways, you sighed, forlorn as the car pulled onto your street at last. Baxter parked and killed the engine. Then he shifted in the driver's seat, his hands still on the wheels, to face you. I've really appreciated your company today, Stella. I have to confess, I had an itinerary planned in the event that you declined my invitation. Don't get me wrong, I wouldn't want you to feel obligated to humor me, so I'm not lonely. I managed perfectly well. But in the end, I'm grateful it didn't come to that. It was infinitely preferable having the choice to spend a few hours in your company.
Thank
I
you.
don't know if you feel the same, or if you did indeed tag along as a favor to me. Either way, thank you. Baxter finished his brief speech and released the wheel. He made as if to get out of the car without waiting for a response. I wanted to spend more time with you. He glanced back, eyes bright. Baxter was awfully pleased, making no attempts to hide that fact. You realized that he'd really been asking you a question in his own roundabout ways. He was hoping you'd enjoy his being there too. It was nice that you could make him happy with such a simple thing. Baxter cleared his throat and shifted in place. His present his pretended escape plan hadn't included taking off the seatbelt. He undid it then. You moved to do the same, and the two of you got out of the car into the warm night air. A goodbye was on the tip of your tongue when Baxter's voice gave you a pause. Stella? You turned to where Baxter stood. Baxter was leaning casually against the hood, one hand on his pants pocket. Forgive me. It's been a long day, and I'm sure you're tired of questions at this point. If you'll indulge me a while longer, I have something else in mind to ask. That didn't bother you. You smiled to show that, if anything, you'd been the one asking most of the questions. Go ahead. One corner of Baxter's mouth lifted in a crooked half smile. He stood up properly, and he continued. Thanks. Well, as I must repeat, today has been particularly lovely. All the lovelier for having spent it with you. And I wonder, would it be too forward of me to consider our time together a date? A beat. You blinked. Wait. A date? Your voice came out a bit squeaky with surprise. Not for the first time today, Baxter had managed to catch you completely off guard. It wasn't lost on him either, but whereas before Baxter might have delighted in getting such a reaction out of you, the expression he gave you now was gentle, friendly. How funny considering the entirely more than friendness of the subject. He ran a hand absent-mindedly through his hair, searching for the most delicate way to put his bluntness. Have I read the signs? Have I read the signals wrong? It wasn't the underlying intention when I asked. I assured you I got the impression of what this may be or could be partway through. And if I'm not entirely off, I'd be far more curious to inquire on whether I might consider any further outings together as dates as well. He edged in closer.
To cut to the chase,
I'm asking you out. This is... If you'd like to spend more time with me, and assuming you'd even want to date a man. Why would you want to date me? I don't like to beat about the bush. That it's that simple. I want to take you out on dates because it's easy to see how it'd be a nice time. I like being around you. A smile tugged at his lips again, recalling the events of the afternoon. Just today, you showed me around your town. We went bowling together, of all things, and it was wonderful. Then we accompanied each other to a fantastic dinner. You made an effort to come to know me better as an individual. I could not be even happier. By the time he finished, Baxter's smile stretched ear to ear. If you don't feel the same, that's fair. I won't be upset with you.
Of
And I'm
course.
certainly not intending for this to be a grand romantic overture. Of course, you wouldn't believe me if I was claiming to be your one and only for all time. He placed a palm to his chest and met your gaze with a crooked smile. I am nominating myself as a suitor for the season, a charming summer adventure. No more, no less. So, a fling, basically? Baxter laughed, self-effacing. You could certainly put it that way. In the end, the point I'm trying to get across is that there are no high stakes here. I don't care about what level, I don't care about what label you choose to put to it. I could be your boyfriend or nothing at all. And you can also change your mind without consequence if you find out it's not what you imagined further down the line. Sounds good to me. Consider yourself suited. At your words, he beamed at you, his face bright in the darkness. Thank you.
Lovely.
You've already given me so much in my time here. I've been very fortunate to have you as my neighbor, and for now, as something else. His tone was measured and polite as well, but you couldn't help but hear an excited edge to the words, as if he were internally bouncing on the balls of his feet with anticipation because he wouldn't do it on the outside. The smile of Baxter's was your favorite. Seeing it, you were already glad to have accepted his offer. On top of your personal feelings, it was cute to have such an impact on him. Underneath his underneath his peculiarities, Baxter was a sweetheart. But once the initial rush had died down, your thoughts drifted to more practical matters. What would you say to people? What would you call this thing between you? You put the question to Baxter, whose eyes lifted up along the edges. Would you care if I told my family or not? My friends are gonna find out for sure, so what a delightful first concern. It's up to you how we go about it. If it's not something you feel comfortable talking about, then I wouldn't insist. My preference would be not to treat it as a secret, however. I'm proud to be doing this, but again, I'm a visitor, and this is your town. The choice is ultimately yours. I'd rather not tell my mom and sister. I'll be teased. Noted that that possibility hadn't occurred to me. If we can avoid it, that's ought to be the good. Now, as much as it pains me to say, I shouldn't keep you any longer.
I'm
Thank you
here
again
if you
for a
need me.
wonderful day, Stella. If ever you want another, You can call or text me. I'm very able to drop what I'm doing and come see you. Or alternatively, you're welcome to come by my place whenever it strikes you. I'll be in touch too, though, so don't feel pressured to initiate. He lifted his hands in a cheery wave, staying put in order to see you head home. Have a good night. At this, the closing moment of your day together, it struck you how much of an impact he'd had on you in such a short time. You cast your mind back further to 5 years ago. It was still so surreal to think about the mysterious boy who had stolen a piece of your heart and vanished without a trace. Not only had he shown up after all this time, but he'd moved into the neighborhood, and now you're dating? The absurdity made your head spin, your chest ache with a profound emotion that you didn't have a name for, like you were seeing the beauty and complexity of the universe laid bare. But you could mull over those thoughts another time. It was getting late, and he was waiting for you. In your parting moment with Baxter, you waved a fond farewell. Good night, Baxter. Baxter had begun the farewell, yet made no move to leave. He watched you cross the road to your home. You turned on the threshold and waved one last time. That familiar grin was the last thing you saw before the door closed behind you. You'd see it again soon enough. It was a strange feeling to be back home after such an eventful afternoon. So much happened in the space of a few short hours, and so much had changed. Of course, where you were right then couldn't be described as without excitement. You were greeted almost immediately by footsteps approaching from the hallway. Sweetie, you're back. I heard the door open. Mom's laugh rang out from behind her, out the pan and into the fire. No. Whoa there? No need to jump on Stella without giving her the chance to take off her shoes. For all we know, it's been a very informative and tiring day. Ma came up in front of you, and Mom appeared over her shoulder. You could see the smirk on Mom's face to go along with the pointed implication in her choice of words. For all that, Mom appeared to be tempering Ma's enthusiasm. They were both guilty of speculating what you were up to all day, and now it was their chance to finally find out. While her wife rested a hand on, while her wife rested a hand to her shoulder, Ma beamed angelically, the picture of innocence. She was the last person to bowl someone over the minute they got home, honest. Huh? What's going on, exactly? Your sister's voice drifted over to the couch. Liz had been sitting watching the TV, but spun around to see what the commotion was about, her show forgotten. The gang was there, and in only a matter of seconds. So how's it go? So how did it go? Did you have a nice time with our new neighbor? Oh, so that's where you've been all afternoon, out with a gentleman caller? How charming. Your sister leaned over the back of the couch with a biting grin on her face. She could have given Baxter a run for his money. Yes, Stella was getting to know Mr. Ward. The rest of us would like to know him as well. I had a lot of fun. Ma clapped her hands together, delighted.
Wonderful.
Oh, that's wonderful. I'm so glad you had a good time. It's good to know that Baxter knows how to treat our Stella well. Yes, very good. We won't have to break his door open. The folks he's renting from wouldn't have appreciated that. Pamela. Mom simply crackled. Mom turned to you, looking apologetic. She'd given up on her wife doing so.
There.
Don't mind your mom, sweetie. You know she wouldn't really embarrass you like that. Or commit a crime. I think that would be the bigger factor in that little scenario. Maybe.
Seriously?
What? How about you tell us more about your day whenever you're ready? With that, your immediate attention around you dispersed, and you were free to collect your thoughts. Slowly, everyone drifted towards the kitchen counter, where they sat, ready and waiting to hear the whole story. You kicked off your shoes. Ma wouldn't allow you to drag dirt in the house, even when she was trying to curry favor. And then you went over and pulled up a stool. You kept it vague, just some general points. Your moms both nodded along, attempting to parse out conclusions from the scraps of info thrown out. They were a comedy pair of detectives all of a sudden, who could tell who was good cop and who was bad cop. They didn't press you too much. Your parents were shrewd enough to understand that you weren't too keen to go into the finer details. Liz rested her chin in her hands on the counter, listening along quietly. You didn't mention eating out at the Cypress in the end, but maybe you'd tell her about it another time. As the night wore on, your moms and Liz ended up chatting almost amongst themselves, engrossed in the conversation of the point where you were able to slip away unnoticed. On the way upstairs to your room, you found yourself glancing back at the front door, as if to catch another glimpse of Baxter over the street. You really hoped he got what you wanted out of the sights he saw. Sunset Bird was a special place to you. If you were lucky, then maybe Baxter had come to realize that as well. you'd certainly reached more of an understanding of him, one way or another. Yet you were positive there was much still buried underneath the surface, so much more to his character than there had appeared to be at first glance. But you didn't mind. You'd known each other for such a small part of your lives. Of course, a single outing wouldn't be enough to qualify an entire person. What was special was that it might not always be that way. Currently, Currently, he was the bowling alley, shiny and new, but someday you might be as familiar with Baxter as you were with the shopping street and the cypress. This day was only a wonderful start.